If you had walked into Gilded Fern that Thursday evening, you would have felt the hush of elegance before even taking your seat. It wasn't the kind of restaurant you found by accident. No one stumbled in wearing sneakers or asked if they had wings on the menu. No, Gilded Fern was where city deals were sealed over dry-aged porterhouse and where diamond bracelets clinked against crystal as quietly as secrets passed across a linen tablecloth. The lighting was low, almost like candlelight without the candles. The kind of warm, golden dimness that smoothed out every flaw and turned ordinary moments into something cinematic. There was a pianist in the corner, just a man in his 60s with a gentle hunch and fingers that moved like water. He was playing a rendition of Stevie Wonder's Lately, and if you weren't paying attention, you'd miss the sadness in it. Table 3 was reserved, as it always was on the third Thursday of the month, for a name that made Gilded Fern's maitre d' stand up straighter and the staff instinctively adjust their posture. Derek Van Doren, tech mogul, venture capitalist, the kind of man who could kill a startup with one tweet or fund a dream before dessert. He never came alone, but no one ever knew who'd be across from him. Sometimes it was a junior executive, sometimes a woman who didn't talk much, always someone trying to impress or be impressed. That night, the woman was young, perhaps early 30s, auburn hair in a perfect twist, lips painted the color of red wine, and posture so upright it looked painful. She said little, smiled even less. And the waitress for table 3? Her name was Noelle Carter. At 27, Noelle had worked at Gilded Fern longer than most of the line cooks. She wasn't the fastest, but she was efficient, quiet, focused. She didn't chat up guests unless they invited it. She never flirted for tips or rolled her eyes after turning her back. She'd memorized the chef's specials with the precision of an actor studying lines. She never spilled, never forgot, and never broke. But Noelle had something most of the other staff didn't. Stillness. A composed, commanding stillness. The kind that came from growing up with a mother who taught her to keep her chin high even when the world tried to press her shoulders down. She wore her uniform like armor. Black slacks, crisp white blouse, dark apron tied perfectly around the waist. Her natural curls were pulled back into a neat bun, not a hair out of place. Her sneakers were black leather, polished. Even her name tag, silver, engraved, seemed to shimmer under the overhead lights like a badge. Noelle was midway through her 6th double shift of the week. Rent was due. Her sister was behind on car payments, and their grandmother had a new prescription that wasn't fully covered. So Noelle said yes to extra hours, yes to extra tables, yes to another round of standing on her feet when they were already numb. That's how you survive. You say yes. At table 6, she was wrapping up an order, a couple celebrating their anniversary, all soft smiles and whispered stories from a 30-year-old photo album. Noelle liked this table. They said thank you after everything and laughed like no one was watching. She was jotting down their dessert choices, lemon tart for her, espresso for him, when it came. The voice, sharp, entitled, loud enough to slice clean through the hum of conversation and land like a slap on polished glass. "Excuse me, hello?" She turned instinctively. Table 3, Van Doren. He didn't like to wait. She knew that. Everyone knew that. But she was finishing a table. That mattered. You never abandon kindness for arrogance. It was one of the few rules she made for herself that actually stuck. With her notepad still in hand, Noelle walked over to table 3, a practiced smile softening her tired face. "Good evening, sir. I'll be with you in just a moment." "I've been waiting 15 minutes, he snapped, glaring. "Do you think I have time to waste?" "I appreciate your patience," she said, calm, even, but firm. From where Ava sat across from him, her eyes didn't move. She didn't look up from the menu, but her hand gripped the edge of her wine glass just a little tighter. Noelle returned to table 6, finished their order with a brief apology for the delay, and sent it to the kitchen before approaching table 3 again. She moved with precision, with control, but her chest was tight, the kind of tightness you get when someone raises their voice, not because they're in pain, but because they think they own the space around them. Still, she didn't let it show. She wouldn't. Not in front of him. Not in front of this room full of whispered glances and expensive watches. She poured water into their glasses. "Would you prefer still or sparkling?" she asked. Van Doren didn't look up. "Oh, you can speak and pour? What a talent. Should I applaud? The joke wasn't meant to be funny. It was meant to belittle. Noelle blinked once. That's all. No flinch, no frown, just one blink. Still or sparkling, she repeated. He let out a scoff. If people like you spent half as much time working as you do whining, maybe you'd get somewhere. That was when the pianist missed a note. That was when the couple at table 6 looked up. That was when the air shifted. But Noelle didn't blink again. She didn't let the heat rise to her cheeks. She didn't let her hand tremble. She just stood, centered, rooted. And in her mind, a phrase started forming. She didn't say it yet. She just let it sit there, like a stone warming in her palm. Across the room, her manager, Curtis Langley, noticed. He had a habit of observing without interfering, unless the wine was spilled or a table broke into shouting. He was watching now, but he didn't move. Noelle stood straighter. She had learned this posture from her grandmother, a woman who'd once marched in Selma and kept a photo of herself in a Sunday dress and worn shoes taped inside her kitchen cabinet as a reminder. We don't lower our eyes unless we're praying. Noelle wasn't praying. Not tonight. Not yet. Noelle took one steady breath. I asked, she repeated, voice clear but never raised, would you prefer still or sparkling? Van Doren finally looked up, really looked. The kind of look people in power give when they're shocked someone below them hasn't shrunk. His eyes narrowed, sharp and searching. Then a hollow, biting laugh escaped his mouth. Oh, I see what this is. Attitude with a side of water, he smirked. You trying to make some point? Is this your sassy little waitress moment? Should I be scared? Ava finally glanced up from the menu. Her mouth parted slightly as if to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, she lowered her eyes again, shame blooming silently behind her lashes. You think you can talk back and still get a tip? Van Doren continued, the smirk morphing into something more sinister. What, you tweet about it later? Make yourself a little victim? Maybe post a quote about dignity or some crap like that? Noelle's hands didn't move, not an inch, but her soul was standing tall behind her eyes. She slowly slipped the order pad into the front pocket of her apron. Her fingers met fabric without fumbling. Mr. Van Doren, she said, no emotion in her tone, only precision. The kitchen's a bit behind, but I'll make sure your order is prioritized. Oh, will you now? He interrupted. Tell me, what do you recommend, Miss Carter, is it? He leaned back in his chair with exaggerated amusement. Something bold? Something blackened? There it was, the third cut, the one that didn't hide behind sarcasm, the one that carried intent. A couple at a nearby table paused mid-conversation. A man at the bar lowered his phone without realizing. Even the pianist, old hands hovering over the keys, missed another note. Silence followed, not the awkward kind, the kind that had weight, like everyone in the room had involuntarily held their breath at once. Noelle met his eyes, not with fire, not with fury, but with something far more unsettling. Stillness, complete, terrifying, dignified stillness. Then she spoke. Just one sentence. No dramatics, no theatrics, but every syllable etched in steel. You must be exhausted carrying that much hate into every room. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They sank, like lead in crystal water. Van Doren blinked. Once. For the first time, his mouth opened without anything coming out. Ava let out a small gasp, barely audible, but it felt seismic in the airtight silence. Someone's fork clinked on porcelain. Someone else whispered, wow. But Noelle didn't move. She just stood, pen still in her apron, hands folded, chest open, shoulders square, no quiver, no retreat. The kind of posture that didn't need a podium to feel presidential. Van Doren finally recovered enough to speak, or at least to try. You think that was clever? He sneered, voice tighter now, smaller. You think that's how you talk to a paying customer? Noelle didn't reply. She didn't need to. The entire dining room had already answered. It was in their silence. It was in the way no one looked at Van Doren with agreement. And Curtis, who had been watching from the host stand, finally approached. His expression unreadable, but his steps unhurried. Is there a problem here, sir? He asked, stopping just behind Noelle, his presence a quiet shield. Yeah, Van Doren snapped, quickly regaining a fraction of his bluster. There is. I've just been insulted. Publicly. Curtis didn't glance at Noelle. His eyes stayed locked on Van Doren. Calm, controlled, but firm. By whom? Van Doren let out a short, incredulous laugh and gestured toward Noelle like she was a spilled drink. Who do you think? Curtis's face remained neutral. Because from where I'm standing, I saw a server ask for your order, and a grown man try to humiliate her in front of a room full of strangers. Ava finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. She didn't say anything wrong. Van Doren turned on her. So now you're on her side? Ava shook her head slowly. I'm not on any side. I just don't want to be part of this. That line, that final disavowal, shifted something. The tension in the room didn't vanish, but it pivoted from Noelle to him. And suddenly he wasn't the man at the center of attention. He was the man under a microscope. Curtis stepped forward once more. Sir, I'm going to ask you to lower your voice. Or what? Van Doren barked. You going to kick me out? No, Curtis replied. I'm giving you a choice. You can stay with respect or leave. Van Doren stood, chair scraping wood. He looked around the room, waiting, daring for someone to speak up for him. No one did. Not one face met his with solidarity. Then he turned to Ava. You coming? She stood, picked up her purse, and without looking at him, said softly, I'll call a car. That was the real sting. He snatched his blazer from the back of the chair, his face dark and twisted, and stormed toward the exit. No one followed. No one spoke, until the doors shut behind him. Only then did the air return to the room. A long exhale, collective, relieved. Curtis turned to Noelle. You okay? She nodded. I'm fine. He nodded back and walked away. But Noelle didn't move. Not yet, because something had happened. And it wasn't over. Not even close. Noelle Carter didn't know she was being recorded. She didn't see the phone subtly tilted just above the rim of a wine glass 2 tables away. She didn't notice the soft click of the camera app being opened. And even if she had, it wouldn't have changed how she stood, how she spoke, or how she refused to flinch. But the internet noticed. By 9:23 p.m., the video, titled Waitress Silences Billionaire with One Line, was posted on Twitter. At 9:29, it was reposted by someone with 80,000 followers. At 10:01, it hit TikTok. By midnight, it had crossed 1.1 million views. Noelle didn't see any of this. She was busy sweeping the corner of the restaurant near the wine rack, humming faintly to herself. Her shift had ended, but she was too wired to leave. Curtis had told her to go home, offered to clock her out early, but she stayed. There was something comforting about the routine. The clearing of plates, the smell of rosemary and lemon, the way the lights dimmed to a softer glow once the last customer left. She didn't feel powerful. She didn't feel heroic. She felt still, tired maybe, but grounded, like her feet had been sinking into quicksand all week, and suddenly she was standing on something solid again. Her phone buzzed once, then twice, then nonstop. It wasn't until she was in the break room, slipping her apron into her tote bag, that she finally checked the screen. 23 missed messages, 7 missed calls. A voicemail from her best friend Maya, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Girl, you broke the internet. She stared at the screen, confused, until she saw the link. It was a 41-second video, blurry and shaky, but unmistakably her. The sentence was clear, the audio crisp despite the background noise. You must be exhausted carrying that much hate into every room. She watched it once, then twice. She didn't say anything, didn't smile, didn't cry, just stared. Then she slid the phone into her pocket and walked out the back door into the cool Chicago night. The air smelled like rain even though the forecast was dry. She took 3 steps, then sat on the short concrete ledge near the trash bins, head tilted to the stars. She could barely see past the glow of street lamps. A car passed. Someone laughed from an apartment window nearby. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. This one was from her sister, Kiara. Kiara. They got you trending, Noelle. You're literally #1. People are calling you a queen. Noelle sighed, not with exhaustion, but with disbelief. She hadn't tried to trend. She hadn't wanted a stage. She just stood. When she got home that night, she didn't go online. She made tea, took off her shoes, sat on the edge of the tub and soaked her feet in warm water. It wasn't until almost 2 a.m. that she finally gave in and opened Twitter. That was when she saw the full storm. Thousands of comments, screenshots, reactions, praise, outrage, people tagging her workplace, calling for Van Doren to be held accountable. News outlets sharing the clip with captions like, "Grace under fire," "When dignity speaks louder than rage," and "This waitress just gave a masterclass in composure." Someone made a remix with gospel music in the background. Another edited it like a movie trailer. TikTok had added captions and inspirational music. People were stitching the clip with their own commentary. Teachers, therapists, even a retired judge who said, "I've ruled over 3,000 cases, and this one line may be the most powerful act of defiance I've seen in a decade." Noelle just stared. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't even sure how she felt. In the morning, the first headline dropped. Billionaire Derek Van Doren faces backlash after public incident goes viral. By lunch, 3 news stations had called the restaurant. By 2 p.m., Curtis called her into the office. "I sent a statement to corporate," he said. "Just wanted you to know. I backed you." Noelle nodded slowly. "Thanks. They're asking if you'd be willing to do press, talk to media, maybe even sit with PR." Noelle raised an eyebrow. "Why now?" Curtis looked uncomfortable. "You're visible now, and they think it's good for business." Noelle didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That night, the restaurant was booked solid. Every table. Waitlist out the door. But not because of the lobster bisque or the dessert flight. People weren't there for food. They were there for her. They wanted to see the woman who didn't yell, the one who stood tall. Noelle carried herself the same as always. Shoulders back, voice calm, smile soft but distant. But inside, something had shifted. She could feel the difference in the way people looked at her now. Some with admiration, others with expectation, and a few with that strange, unsettling glint of possession, like they had watched her go viral and now believed she owed them something. During dinner service, a woman in her 50s reached out and touched Noelle's hand as she poured wine. "You're remarkable," she said. Noelle nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." A man at table 4 left a $500 tip. Another left a note that simply read, "For your courage." But Noelle didn't want to be courageous. She just wanted to work her shift, pay her bills, go home. It wasn't until she returned to the break room that she saw it, an envelope, sealed, with her name written in neat, professional script. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a letter from Van Doren's lawyer. Polite, carefully worded. He was deeply remorseful, wanted to apologize formally and respectfully, offered to meet in person if agreeable. No legal action was pending. He simply wished to make amends. Noelle stared at the paper for a long time, then folded it back into the envelope and tucked it under her notebook. That evening, she met Maya at a small diner off Halsted. Greasy menus, vinyl booths, the kind of place where no one cared who you were online. "He wants to meet?" Maya asked. Noelle nodded. "You gonna go?" Noelle shook her head. "I don't need his apology." "Then what?" "I need people to understand that what I said wasn't for him." Maya leaned back, thoughtful. "You think they will?" "No," Noelle said. "But maybe they'll think twice next time." 2 days later, a donation was made to a nonprofit youth center on the South Side. 5 full scholarships, all made in Noelle's name, anonymous. But the letterhead confirmed where it came from. That same day, a group of teens at the center invited her to speak. She didn't want to. She wasn't a role model, but she went. 20 chairs, 1 folding table, and 20 kids, some with hoodies pulled tight, some with arms crossed, most of them skeptical. She stood before them without notes, without a mic. "Most of the time," she began, "you don't get to choose how people see you, but you do get to choose how you respond." They were quiet, not bored, just listening. "I didn't stand there because I'm brave," she said. "I stood there because I was tired." One boy asked, "What happened after you said that line?" Noelle looked him in the eyes. Nothing. Then she smiled. But it was the kind of nothing that changes everything. By the end of the week, Noelle Carter was no longer just the waitress from the clip. She was on the front page of 2 newspapers. She was the focus of 4 opinion columns. And somewhere in the chaos, a journalist from The Atlantic called her the quiet resistance we all needed to see. But she wasn't reading any of it anymore. She had turned off notifications. She stopped checking hashtags. She didn't care how many millions of people had shared the moment, or how many strangers were suddenly using her face to talk about grace, race, class, or power, because none of them had to show up to work the next day. None of them had to see the eyes of people who now looked at her like she was a symbol instead of a person. None of them had to walk past coworkers who whispered too loud or customers who stared too long. And certainly none of them had to sit across from a corporate board in a windowless room and hear the phrase, "We think you have a voice worth investing in." The Gilded Fern's parent company had flown in executives from New York. They brought glossy binders, words like brand alignment, and ideas for Noelle's moment to become a campaign. Commercials, panels, a podcast series on dignity in the workplace, all for a woman they had never asked about before. She sat at that boardroom table, a linen folder in front of her, untouched. "So what do you think?" one of the suits asked. Noelle didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, calloused, strong, unapologetically real. Then she looked up. "I think you didn't care when I got cursed at last month." A pause. "And I think if I'd cried or yelled or thrown something, we wouldn't be sitting here." Another pause. "I think your campaign's not about dignity, it's about damage control." Silence. Cold. Corporate. She stood. "I'm not here to be your brand." She left the folder behind. By the time she returned to the kitchen, Curtis was waiting. "You good?" he asked. Noelle nodded. "I don't want to be famous," she said. "I want to be free." Later that night, she stayed behind after closing. Not to clean, not to finish a shift, but because she needed quiet. Real quiet. She sat at one of the empty tables near the back, the one by the window with the view of the alley. The table nobody requested, the one too close to the exit. She watched a cat cross the pavement outside, slow and curious. The soft whir of the dishwasher still running in the back was the only sound. Then came a knock. She turned. It was Jamal, the dishwasher. He held a brown paper bag and wore the same hoodie he always did. "You hungry?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Always." He sat across from her, pulled out 2 sandwiches. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then he said, "You know what no one's talking about?" She raised an eyebrow. "How scared that man was." She blinked. "He wasn't scared of you," Jamal continued. "He was scared of what you made him feel. Small, powerless, seen." Noelle didn't reply. "I've been here 3 years," he said. "I've seen people scream, threaten, tip hundreds just to feel superior. But I've never seen one of them walk out looking that empty." Still, Noelle said nothing. "You didn't beat him," Jamal said. "You unmasked him. That's what scared him." A pause. "I should have said something that night." "You're saying it now," Noelle replied. He nodded. "That counts?" "It does to me." They sat there, 2 tired souls in the dim light of a restaurant after hours, sharing silence like a meal. 3 days later, she received another letter. No logo, no legalese, just a short handwritten note on cream cardstock. "Noelle, I can't undo what I said. I can't take back what I carried into that room, but I can try not to carry it again. Thank you for being still when I wasn't." She read it once, then tucked it into a drawer under her socks. She didn't forgive him, but she didn't need to hate him either, not anymore. Because the truth was this: she hadn't spoken for him. She had spoken for every person who'd ever been talked down to, written off, silenced. Every black girl who got called aggressive for standing up. Every service worker who got dismissed as invisible. Every human being who had to weigh survival against self-respect and wonder which mattered more. She had spoken for them, and that couldn't be undone. 1 week later, she agreed to speak again. Not on a stage, not for a campaign, but in a room of 18 teenage girls at a local shelter. They gathered in a circle, no microphones, no lights, just voices. Noelle told them about her grandmother, about standing tall, about choosing stillness when the world demands you shrink. One girl, no older than 15, asked, "But what if they don't listen?" Noelle smiled. "They will. Maybe not right away. Maybe not loudly. But they will." Then she added softly, "You don't have to yell to be powerful. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes your silence is the thing that echoes longest." And she meant it, because she had seen it, lived it, and now carried it with her. Not like a shield, but like a seed, planted deep, growing quietly, until one day it blooms exactly when it needs to. If you ever find yourself in a room where someone tries to make you feel small, remember, your power doesn't come from shouting. It comes from choosing who you are in that moment. And when the storm passes, it won't be the noise they remember. It'll be your stillness. Because dignity, that's the voice that never needs to be raised.